The city of Ahmedabad, also called Ahmedabad by the locals, is the former capital and the largest city in the state of Gujarat. It is a startling metropolis with a long history and many remarkable buildings, fantastic architecture in the old world poles of Ahmedabad that speak volumes about the culture that originated and still pertains in the narrow streets, secret passageways, old havelis, temples, and stepwells of the 21st century Ahmedabad. As a part of our off campus study, we went to Ahmedabad for a week long trip, starting from the 28th of March to the 4th of April, where we toured the city and experienced firsthand the lifestyle of the people and how it's influenced by the architecture of the place. Day 1. After refreshing ourselves from the tiring train journey, we set off to visit one of the most important sites in Ahmedabad, the Sabarmati Ashram, the abode of one of Indian history's greatest men, the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Sabarmati Ashram was an epitome of simplicity in plan, construction, and keep, where the main part of the ashram was converted into a museum in memory of Gandhiji, showcasing some of his original letters during his struggle for our freedom. The ashram was simply designed with small huts which had plastered walls with certain exposed brick facades and wooden roofing on the inside and red tiles which helped keep the huts cool. The landscaping of the ashram was done in such a way that the one side of the boundary was the entire river, and the rest of the property had plenty of lush greens which provided ample cover for sitting outside. The windows of the ashram were louvres so as to block the sunlight out. In most cases, the windows directly overlooked trees or perhaps another building, which again provided shade. The huts where the family lived has an open courtyard system like in most houses of that time. The rooms faced the open courtyard whose flooring was again done using brickbats which were probably watered down in summers to keep the house cool. Day 2. Our next day began with a visit to Sarkhej Roza, a tomb and a mosque complex built under the reign of King Ahmad Shah and his successors. The architects of the complex were two Muslim brothers whose shrines were placed nearby upon their death. The entrance gateway to this complex was an arched gateway which led to an open area with buildings on the other three sides. The building to the left had two tombs, and the building was designed to be similar to that of the Hall of Thousand Pillars in Greece. The entire complex is built upon the principle of a column and beam construction. Each column had an extremely decorated stylobate and capital, and all the columns were identical throughout the complex. To allow light to filter in through the complex, the windows were fitted in with jalis symmetrically cut out in sandstone. The doorways inside the building weren't of a huge scale, rather like a normal sized doorway. Several Hindu influences such as the Amalka and the Kalash, the Rajputana Jharokas, found a place in the design of the complex. The Jharokas too have jalis for the purpose of veiling the women looking out of them. The complex has a structure like the Divan-e-Aam too for the meeting with the villagers. The mosque, which was banned for the women, was a domed structure with the typical domes of the Sultanate times. Moving on from Sarkhej Roza, we visited the esteemed National Institute of Design. Since photography was forbidden in the complex, we don't have much evidence to show. The entire campus was built in blocks where each block had several open spaces, supported by columns, and the paths were flanked by stone paths and water features. Due to the lush green campus, several peacocks roamed around the campus freely. The entire lower floor has been mainly dedicated to showcasing and studios. NID was like a complete surprise package. You never know what turn takes you where. Next, we headed on to CEPT, one of our country's finest architectural universities. Established in 1962 and designed by B.V. Doshi, the building of CEPT is a truly wonderful design. Made out of exposed brick and concrete, the slabs and beams created a natural course for movement. The two-storied building had pivoted windows which let the natural ventilation happen in the best way possible. The campus has been designed to have a lot of forums to enable discussion and debates. Most of the decor in the building has been made by the students themselves in wood, tin, and board. The campus also hosts the infamous Doshi Gufa, which is an underground space with domed roof shells protruding from the ground, much like the Lakoff caves. The entire Hussein Doshi Gufa has curved walls, and the floor too isn't flat, rather curved. The entire space of the Gufa is covered by paintings by M.F. Hussain, and the structure is supported by a single curved column in the center of the Gufa. The Gufa is ventilated by small round openings in the sides of the dome. Day 3. We started the day with an excursion out to Adlaj, a village close by to the main city of Ahmedabad. The stepwell of Adlaj is a stunning example of Indo-Islamic architecture. The structure is built in Solanki style of architecture with Islamic influence and consists of 5 stories, each of which is uniquely designed with intricate carvings all over the walls. The stepwells traditionally served two purposes: as a place to store water and a place for travelers to stay. Slowly, they became a cultural and economic hub as travelers began conducting their business there. Very little sunlight penetrated the stepwell due to its depth in the lower stages. The various carvings on the walls were a take from the Hindu culture, as many gods and goddesses adorned the walls there. There were several canals for the water to be taken to the cattle to bathe and feed them. Water still exists in the stepwell, however, it is hardly accessible. We saw another example of exemplary architecture, the Rani Ka Wagh, another stepwell in Patan. The stepwell is said to have been covered completely and later excavated and studied. The stepwell is said to have been built in the 11th century. It has 7 levels, out of which 2 are broken down. It hosts more than 500 sculptures of the various Hindu gods: the Dash Avatar of Vishnu, the famous trio of Preserver, Creator, and Destroyer, the gods with their consorts, and the famous Nataraj and Anant Shayanam. The walls are made in sandstone entirely, and there is not a single element without carving. The columns again are highly decorative with capitals and stylobates intricately carved. As we moved further away from the main city, we went to Madhera, where we visited the Sun Temple. This too was of the Solanki style of architecture, built in the 11th century and dedicated to the sun god, and thus faces east, that is the direction of the rising sun. The complex has a massive rectangular stepped tank which was interspaced with a number of big and small shrines dedicated to various gods of the Hindu religion. The main temple has a mandapa, which was a pillared hall, as well as a Nat Mandir or the dancers' hall before the main Garbhagriha or the Sanctum Sanctorum. The walls of the temple were carved with figurines dancing women, scenes from the great epics, stories of Lord Krishna, and much more. The figurines in the temple have been defaced by Muslims in an invasion that happened, and thus the temple is not an active shrine anymore. Day 4. Our morning started with the heritage walk, which enabled us to take a walk down the lanes of old Ahmedabad and see how the people actually live and how architecture true to Gujarat is. We started with the Kavi Dalpat Ram Chowk, where we saw the house of the famous poet, which has been uniquely preserved by showcasing its plan through tiles on the floor. Continuing on our journey, we saw several bird feeders, which were towers designed in such a way that only children could go up the narrow stairs and fill the feeders with food. Each polar society has its own gateway, and the poles were interconnected through secret passageways known only to the residents. The carvings and the decor was mostly done in teak, which was a long-lasting material. The poles have open courtyards and narrow streets where the residents can meet. Most of the Havelis were load-bearing structures with rooms facing the open courtyard. The Juma Mosque was built with several influences to Hindu architecture, as the workers were the same. It is one of the only mosques with a reserved space for women to pray covered with jalis. The mosque was a column and beam construction with domical roofs. We moved on to see the IIM Ahmedabad, or the Indian Institute of Management Studies. The entire old campus was built in exposed brick, the English bond to be precise, with arched doorways. The campus saw bull's-eye arches, flat arches, true arches, and segmental arches covering the lintel of each door. The new campus has been built entirely in concrete using precast slabs. The new campus is connected by an underground passage to the old campus, which has panels on the famed architect Louis Kahn. The campus has several open spaces, each shaded by buildings, so the heat keeps out. Day 5. We visited the Lakshmi Vilas Palace in Baroda, which is still the property of the king and not of the government. The USP of this building was the combination of the architecture of four religions: the Hindu temple, the Sikh Gurudwara, the Christian church, and the Islamic mosque. The amalgamation of these forms made a truly stunning building where the king still resides. The palace had several materials imported from various countries like Italy and Germany. The statues around the palace are all made of bronze and denote various cultures around the world. The palace showcases an armory which contains weapons from all eras. The paintings in the palace are all said to have a 3D effect, as the goddesses follow you as you move from one direction to another. The 6 days that we spent at Ahmedabad helped us experience the entire city as a whole. The culture through the Heritage Walk and the noisy Law Street where hawkers sold their wares at night. The peace at both the stepwells, the temples, the vibe at other universities, an insight on how students study and work, and how good building designs help people work better. We saw, experienced, and learned all through the 6 days we spent at our destination, and for sure we'll remember it for the rest of our lives.